What's up, guys? This is Mike from Sex Band. I just finished mixing my third single, Put In My Time. And as usual, I want to tell you a bit of the story behind it, how I got there, in the hopes that someone else who survived abuse like I did and needs something helpful in the media for them uh, will find something that can give them a little hope, give them a better path, or at least someone who understands out there. It's what I'm trying to offer. About 6, 7 months ago, I ended up getting a new therapist. I had to stop leaving my old one due to or I had to stop meeting with my old one due to an insurance issue. She was no longer part of my plan. Took about a year off, actually, because I was just so reticent to get a new one. Finally, I know I needed it, so I ended up with a great woman, Lori Thompson, who's been just amazing for me. And she's got a different viewpoint. She's got a different style. She's a different voice than my old counselor Tony. So it turns out that that year that I spent between the two, I'd spent. So it turns out the year that I'd spent between therapists, I also spent stuck in the past. I was obsessed by reliving what happened to me, by rethinking it, by thinking of ways I could have changed it, things I could have done different, being angry about what happened, and just constantly living in the past. Constantly taking myself out of 2018, 2019, and living in 1988. All I could think about, all I had room for in my life was the abuse. And the people who hurt me are now dead. They both died of cancer in the 90s, different types of cancer. And there's no way I can confront them. There's no way I can go back and find resolution. There's no way I can go back and get some closure on any of it. But we came up with a plan that thought we should at least try. I still live in the same state that I grew up in New Jersey. And Lori, my therapist, suggested if I'm having so much trouble where I'm not living in the present, maybe I should try and find some closure. And the best plan that we could come up with was me going back to my old house where it happened at, in the town I grew up in, and just being there and seeing what feelings came to me. And I honestly thought it was bullshit. I didn't think I'd have any feelings. I thought that going back to see my old house would be a symbolic gesture that had no that wasn't really grounded in recovery. It was just something I would do. I don't know. I didn't think it would help me. I didn't think I'd have any feelings. But I did it because I'm dedicated to trying to get better, and I wanted to test out how my relationship with this therapist was going to work. If I ended up going and it was bullshit, then I wasn't really going to find anything I needed with her, was I? So I went. I put my best clothes on and drove the Lexus so no one would call the cops on this weirdo sitting outside of a house for 10 minutes that doesn't belong in that town. Put on my best suit. Well, I didn't really wear a suit, but you know what I mean. I parked a house down. I couldn't really bring myself to go park right in front of it. And what happened to me was the neighbors, who were my babysitter, whenever they got a chance alone with me is when they would hurt me. They were 2 houses down, and I was right between the two. I was parked at a house that an older couple had lived in, and I felt safe parking there because they'd always been super kind to me. And that'll come into play later in the story. So I'm parked in front of the older couple's house and looking right at my house and looking behind me at the neighbor's house, and I actually did start feeling something. I was angry. I remember just looking back and seeing that space again. It really hit home that I was just a kid. When I was a kid, those houses seemed massive to me. They were huge. I mean, you're like 3 feet tall. Everything seems huge, but as an adult, I went there and everything seemed so small. And just being in that physical space and realizing how different I am now compared to, what I was at 10 years old, at 8 years old, it really put into context just how long ago that was, and that it really was something that happened in the past. And it really gave me some sort of, something physical to latch onto, to understand that I'm not that kid anymore that's helpless, that I'm an adult, that part of my life is long over. And what I really wanted to do to drive that home and really give myself some distance from the events was just exist in that space. So I got out and I took a walk around the town. I realized how close my old school was. When I was a kid, school was 2 blocks away, and they let me walk to school on my own. It felt like miles. I had these tiny little legs, and I'm trying to run to get there before the bell. And I lit up a cigarette, and I was at the school before I even got half finished it. And that just gave me something, again, physical, the size difference, the scale, about how different I am now. So I get to the school. Funny story, I'm walking around just sort of reliving old memories, thinking about old teachers, and there's a mother and a couple of her kids walking towards me, and they see this stranger, and they cross the street. And I don't know, maybe I was meant to see that. This mom protecting her kids from someone she doesn't know. This mom protecting her kids from someone she doesn't know. The way that no one protected me. And that put that thought in my head. So I turned around and I started walking back to my car. And I just saw these rows and rows of houses, of neighbors, friends, people I knew, families that I would, spend time with. And this was happening to me the whole time. And no one gave a shit. There's no way a street that small, no one knew what was happening. No one knew what those people were doing to the kids on the block. But it was the 80s, and you just didn't talk about that. That's what my mom said when I asked her about it. She said, we don't talk about that. And so I'm looking around this town as I walk back to my car. I'm looking at the street, and I realize these people didn't give a shit about me. I realized that there was nothing for me at that street. They didn't protect me then. They weren't going to give me anything now that I needed. And so I realized that part of my life really was a different time, and it's over, and I got nothing to gain by reliving it, by thinking about it constantly, by being obsessed by it. What I told myself was, I'm going to go home where people love me. I'm going to go home to the life I have now that I'm missing out on because of how fucked up I am over this. And as I'm driving home, I think, it's where the thoughts that led to this song came from. I've put in my time. I've put in my suffering. I've paid my dues. I don't need to go through this anymore. I've done all I can be expected to do. I've put in enough hurt, and I've lived through enough that I deserve something now. I deserve my own life now. I deserve to live every day without being dominated by what happened to me. I've been through enough. I should have what I have left of my life to myself. I'm 37, going to be 38 soon. If I'm lucky, I got another good 30, 35 years left in me. Those should be mine. Those shouldn't belong to my neighbors, to my parents who didn't stop it, to the people that on the block who goddamn knew what was going on and didn't care. It doesn't belong to them. It's my life. So that's why I wrote Put In My Time. The lyrics, the mood, the song, everything is just about, I regret what happened. I wish it hadn't. But I've suffered enough. I'm not going to put myself through anymore. Anyway, if this was helpful to you, leave a comment, send a private message on Twitter. That's at SEKTSBand, SEKTSBAND. I'm always happy to listen. I can't be your therapist, but I can be a friend. All right?